Okay, to go and talk about technologies again, here's a video from Warhorse. If you've seen that movie, here's a clip of the French attacking a German camp, and they're doing it kind of with old style offensive strategies, and of course the Germans were going to have machine guns here.
Good luck, my friends. Forward, work! 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 Forward, chapter! Chapter! Forward!
And this was just one of the reasons why the war was so deadly. In the trenches, a lot of times, again, your leaders, your captains, your lieutenants, your generals would lead you over the top, as they would say. They blow a whistle, and all the men would go over the top and run through this place called No Man's Land. And it was called No Man's Land for a reason, to try and get to the other side.
Andrew is good! Andrew! Nobody's retreating today! Andrew! Andrew, nobody is retreating today!
As you can see, it was pretty deadly. Besides dogs carrying your message, they had horses that carried message, passenger pigeons that carried messages. It was hard to run wires out there to get communication out to the trenches, so a lot of times animals were used. Again, here's some of the artillery. Look at those shells being shot 12, 11, miles away and exploding with force. Of course, airplanes and dogfights, as they would call them, fighting in the sky, would become deadly. The Red Baron, a German ace, Baron Manfred von Richthofen, also known as the Red Baron, had over 80 kills before he was brought down. This is a picture of a passenger pigeon who carried a message to an American trench who was getting shot by Americans, and they didn't know it, and so they sent this pigeon to tell them to stop. And when the pigeon delivered the message, he was missing a foot and missing an eye. Again, how did new technologies affect World War I battlefields? Well, the technologies of machine guns, poison gas, airplanes, tanks, were devastating in World War I. Both sides dug in after they were destroyed by these new types of technologies, and this would turn into a very long, drawn-out war. Anytime they tried to go in between the trenches to try and take the other force, they would have to go through a place called no man's land, and it's called that for a reason. So you had your front trenches and your reserve trenches, that you would fall back into in case they would eventually break the plane here and go through the barbed wire and get into your trenches. Trench warfare was very deadly, but not only deadly, disease broke out and lice was rampant. And I know this is a nasty picture of trench foot of, you're just standing in wet, mud and water for months and months, and it does terrible things to your feet and the nerves. You got to worry about snipers. Here's a quick film. I'm not going to watch all of it, but about the World War I backpack. The backpack was huge and heavy.
When American doughboys marched into battle in World War I, they not only faced the brutality of trench warfare, machine guns, and gas attacks, they also had to contend with their own inferior equipment, none worse than their clumsy backpack. To help answer your questions about this equipment, a group from the Great War Historical Society strapped on the original gear and ran through some simulated combat exercises. You've got an extra to what they 1/3 of his body. It's not a bag. It appears to be a bag, but it is not a bag. Trust me. You pull the straps and flaps, and this thing just explodes. And this is what detachable and carried the soldier's blanket, shelter half, and shelter half pole and pins. On the belt you'd find ammo, a first aid kit, a canteen cover, and a canteen and cup. Inside the flaps were a bacon tin, a condiment can for salt, sugar, and coffee, and boxes of bread rations, sometimes packed in metal to protect them from gas attacks. Also a towel, soap dish, shaving kit, handkerchief, foot powder, and extra socks. Attached to the outside were the bayonet, shovel, or entrenching tool, and finally, a mess kit.
Just a couple battles real quick. The Battle of Verdun, it lasted almost a year. February 1916 to December 1916, 2 million engaged between the French and the Germans. And it was just a devastating battle where 435,000 Germans were killed to the French 550,000 killed to try and end the war. But obviously it did not end the war.
In the Battle of Verdun, the longest battle of the Great War, two countries fought tirelessly for 10 months on a battlefield of less than 10 square kilometers. Planned by the Chief of Staff of the German Army, General Erich von Falkenhayn, it was a battle of attrition, whose initial purpose was not necessarily to win, but rather to drain the French army of manpower and resources.
And that's how most battles were fought. They knew that they would never win a side. They were just hoping one side would quit, almost like the Civil War. The Battle of Somme was a battle where the British engaged the Germans. And on the first day, they lost 60,000 casualties alone on the first day. After the long war, 1.2 million were casualties, and only 7 miles of ground were gained. America's stand. Well, we're not in the war in 1914 or 1915 or 1916. We wouldn't get in until 1917. America was a big melting pot at the time. We had lots of different ethnic groups. We had German Americans, Irish Americans, Austro-Hungarian Americans, and so we really didn't want to pick a side, even though we kind of favored the British and French because, well, we speak English and have a lot of traditions, and the French helped us out during the American Revolution, so our ties were closer to them. What really kind of turned us against the Germans and Austro-Hungaries were what they did in Belgium, what they did to the townspeople, what they did to women. And this was sometimes exaggerated by the press, but it was pretty terrible. This was a Belgian nurse who smuggled out prisoners of war out of Belgium when the Germans occupied it, and when they found out about her, they executed her. Americans fell into three groups. You're either an isolationist, you didn't want to stay out of the war completely, no help, no aid. An interventionalist, you want to get on the side with the Allies and help the French and the British win this war. Or you're an internationalist. You want the U.S. to play an active role, meaning kind of a negotiator, help with both sides to try and end the war. Be part of foreign affairs, but do not send troops. Supplying the war. America, we sent supplies to both sides. Both the Germans, the French, the British, and we made profit out of this. Both countries put up blockades to try and stop supplies coming in. One thing that upset America was the battleship, or not, excuse me, the passenger ship, the Lusitania. There was about 1,200 souls on board, and they all perished on May 7th, 1915. 128 Americans were on board too, and we got pretty upset. Like, why would you shoot down a passenger ship? It just had passengers, but the Germans said no, it had ammunition. And it actually did, and that's why it sunk so fast. It had contraband that the Germans knew that it was hauling, but America was still upset anyway. But we did not go to war. What is contraband? Goods, usually defined as weapons and other articles used to fight war, can be confiscated on the high seas, but you're not supposed to shoot the ship down. Non-contraband goods such as food, medical supplies, and other non-military items are supposed to stay on the ship to help stop the suffering of people during the war. Well, the Germans had promised not to sink another passenger ship after the Lusitania, but they broke their pledge again in 1960 by shooting down a French passenger ship, the Sussex. And then again they told the Americans, we're sorry, we won't do it again. Look at this map and look at all these dots, and it shows you where ships have been sunk in just a 6-month period. Wilson has an election in 1916 and he's going to win. Close victory, but his slogan was, he kept us out of war. And he did. But once he won re-election, he kind of got America ready to go to war. With the National Defense Act, helped prepare us for more troops, and the Naval Construction Act built more ships. The thing that really made us go into war was the Zimmermann Note. This was a note sent from Germany to the ambassador in Mexico, and it tried to convince Mexico, saying, hey, Mexico, if you declare war on the United States, when this war is over and you keep America occupied, we'll give you the lands of Texas, Mexico, and Arizona, New Mexico and Arizona back to you. Well, this message was intercepted by the British. They decoded it, and they sent it to America, and this was kind of the final straw for America, saying, I think we need to get involved. Even though Mexico would have never attacked us, this was the last straw. And Wilson and Congress declare war. We must save this world. This world must be safe for democracy. And that's the end of Chapter 6, Section 1, Notes.